Get this fucking charity case out of my sight before she stinks up the whole room. Beatrice Delancey's voice, sharp as shattered glass, cut through the sophisticated hum of the celestial charity ball. She seized Alara Vance's arm, her diamond rings digging into the young woman's skin, and shoved her backward with the casual cruelty of someone who had never been told no. Alara, a lone island of simplicity in a sea of haute couture, stumbled, her understated navy dress catching on the corner of a crystal champagne flute tower. Her son, Sterling, a predator smelling blood, immediately whipped out his phone. The camera's red recording light was a malevolent eye, zooming in with predatory focus on Alara's face as she struggled to regain her balance. "Oh, this is going straight to TikTok, you guys," he narrated with a sneer, his voice a slick, condescending purr. "Live from the Grandorian Museum. We've got a real-life Cinderella, except her fairy godmother is probably a social worker from the Bronx. Poor girl actually thinks she belongs here." His sister Blair snatched the invitation from Alara's hand, waving it above her head like a captured flag. "Look, everyone, look!" she shrieked, her voice a high-pitched performance for the gathering crowd. "Someone's been playing dress-up with a fake ticket printed on cheap cardstock." With a final theatrical flourish, she ripped the invitation in two. The sound of tearing paper, a small, violent act, echoed through the vast marble hall, amplified by the sudden, expectant silence. The two halves of the invitation fluttered down to the polished floor like wounded doves. Security guards, large men in impeccably tailored suits, began to move in, their expressions a mixture of professional duty and weary resignation. The Delancey family, Beatrice, the matriarch, Sterling, the social media vulture, Blair, the influencer princess, and finally Harrison, the patriarch, summoned by the commotion, formed a tight, menacing circle around Alara. Their phones were out, a constellation of digital eyes recording her public execution from every conceivable angle. 200 of Chicago's most elite guests, a glittering assembly of old money and new power, turned to watch the unscheduled entertainment. Alara bent to collect the torn pieces of her life, her hands trembling almost imperceptibly as a wave of cruel, self-satisfied laughter rippled through the crowd. Have you ever been publicly crucified by people who had no idea they were writing their own obituaries? Before we dive into this insane story of revenge and redemption, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to Black Tales Stories, because you are not going to want to miss a single second of this. The torn invitation pieces lay scattered like funeral confetti at Alara's feet. She knelt with a grace that seemed utterly out of place amidst the ugliness, collecting each fragment while the Delancey clan towered over her, their phones capturing the perfect angle of her supposed shame. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beatrice announced to the growing audience, her voice dripping with a poisonous, theatrical concern. "It appears we have a gatecrasher situation, a security breach. Some people, it seems, simply don't understand the meaning of the word exclusive." Sterling adjusted his camera angle, speaking directly into his phone for his rapidly growing audience. "Guys, you are witnessing peak delusion right here. This is what happens when keeping it real goes horribly, horribly wrong." His TikTok was already exploding, climbing past 25,000 views in under a minute. Blair had switched to Instagram Live, her follower count jumping in real time from 40,000 to 55,000 as word spread. "This is actually painful to watch," she whispered to her followers, her face a perfect mask of feigned sympathy. "Like, the secondhand embarrassment is literally killing me right now. I feel so bad for her." The museum's head of security, a formidable man named Marcus Holloway, approached with visible reluctance. Trailing in his wake was Dr. Evelyn Reed, the museum director, her face a tight mask of professional anxiety. "Ma'am," Holloway addressed Alara, his voice a low, respectful rumble. I'm going to need to verify your invitation status for tonight's event. Beatrice's laugh was a sharp, cutting sound. Marcus, darling, the evidence is right there on the floor. It's clearly a forgery, probably printed at some back-alley print shop in Englewood. The crowd, a perfect circle of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, pressed closer. The glint of 100 phone cameras in the museum's ambient lighting looked like the eyes of a wolf pack closing in. Dr. Reed was nervously tapping at her tablet. The Vance Foundation table. They're listed as our premier platinum sponsor, a $500,000 contribution. Anyone can steal a foundation name, Evelyn, Sterling interrupted, his phone still glued to Alara's face. Dad, didn't you used to handle corporate security at Bain? Tell them about identity theft. It happens all the time. Harrison Delancey finally pushed through the crowd, his own phone buzzing incessantly in his pocket. What in God's name is all this commotion? I have the Vance Dynamics signing at 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow morning. Our $900 million partnership depends on— Handle your business calls later, Harrison, Beatrice snapped, cutting him off. We're dealing with a social emergency here, a matter of standards. The event coordinator, a harried-looking woman named Chloe, appeared with her clipboard, whispering urgently to Holloway. Sir, the live auction starts in 5 minutes. Nye, we need to resolve this. Quickly. Elara finally stood, the torn pieces of the invitation arranged carefully in her palm, as if they were precious artifacts. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady, almost serene, a calm lake in the middle of a hurricane. I understand there has been some confusion about my presence here tonight. Confusion? Blair laughed, a shrill, ugly sound directed at her phone. Girl, there's no confusion. You don't belong here. This isn't a soup kitchen fundraiser. The comments on her live stream exploded. Why won't security just drag her out? This is so cringe. Poor thing doesn't even realize. Someone needs to help her understand her place. In the crowd, a distinguished elderly man, Judge Robert Miller, began recording discreetly with his phone, his expression growing more troubled with each passing second. Beside him, Dr. Alicia Evans, a prominent surgeon, leaned toward her husband. This doesn't feel right, Charles. They're being unnecessarily cruel. This is a public lynching. Beatrice, whose ears missed nothing, heard the whisper and turned her head sharply. Alicia, surely you, of all people, understand the importance of maintaining standards. These events require appropriate boundaries. Appropriate boundaries? Dr. Evans' eyebrows rose. Or appropriate prejudices, Beatrice? The tension in the room shifted, thickening like tar. A few guests began to look uncomfortable, sensing the evening had taken a dark, ugly turn. Sterling sensed the mood change and doubled down, feeding his audience the narrative they craved. Sometimes reality hits hard, people. Not everyone gets to live the dream. And tonight, the dream is over for this one. His video was approaching 100,000 views. Holloway cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on Elara. Miss, do you have any other form of identification that might help us resolve this matter? Before Elara could respond, Beatrice stepped forward again, a queen defending her court. Marcus, we do not have time for this charade. The Delancey family has donated over $5 million to this museum over the last decade. Our word should be sufficient. She gestured dismissively at Elara's simple attire. Look at her, for heaven's sake. Does she look like someone who belongs at a $20,000 a plate charity gala? The dress is from a department store. The shoes are from a discount rack. This is embarrassing for everyone involved. Harrison's phone buzzed again, more urgently this time. He glanced at the screen. Julian Vance, urgent. He declined the call, his focus entirely on his wife's masterful social execution. Blair zoomed her phone's camera in on Elara's clutch. Even her purse looks fake. Like, girl, we can tell the difference between real Bottega and a knockoff from Maxwell Street. The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone called out, "Just have security escort her out quietly." Another voice, "This is getting uncomfortable to watch." A third, "Someone should call this into the Tribune." Ilara's phone buzzed insistently in her clutch. The screen, briefly visible to nearby guests, showed a contact. Dad, Julian Vance, with multiple missed call notifications beside it. She declined the call without a word. Beatrice pounced on the moment. "See? Even her phone calls are disruptive. This is exactly what I mean about appropriate behavior in a civilized society." Holloway looked increasingly uncomfortable, caught between the museum's biggest donors and his own professional ethics. "Ma'am, if you could just show me some identification." "She already showed you her fake invitation," Sterling interjected, his voice dripping with condescension. "What more proof do you need that she's a liar?" The museum's official photographer, a man who had seen everything in his 30 years on the job, had been discreetly documenting the entire confrontation from multiple angles. The images he was capturing would later become evidence in ways none of them could possibly imagine. Dr. Reed checked her watch. "Ladies and gentlemen, our live auction begins in 3 minutes. Perhaps we could resolve this." "First," Beatrice finished firmly. She turned to address the entire assembly, her voice resonating with authority. "Before we proceed with tonight's festivities, and before we raise millions for a worthy cause, we need to handle this security breach appropriately." The circle of Chicago's elite tightened around Ilara like a designer-clad noose. What had begun as curious observation had transformed into active participation as more socialites pulled out their phones, turning a human being's humiliation into their prime social media content. "This is actually insane," whispered Chicago socialite Tiffany Sterling into her phone, live streaming to her 60,000 Instagram followers. "It's like watching a social suicide in real time." Beatrice sensed the crowd's energy and fed off it, raising her voice theatrically. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely why exclusive events matter. Without proper screening, without maintaining standards, anyone can just waltz in and contaminate the atmosphere." Sterling had switched to a second TikTok account, one dedicated to cringe content. His follower count climbed past 150,000 as he provided a running, mocking commentary. "Update: security still hasn't removed her. This is getting painful, guys. Seriously, the cringe is real." Judge Miller stepped forward, his very presence commanding immediate attention. "Beatrice, as someone who has presided over numerous discrimination cases, I must say this young woman appears calm and respectful. Perhaps we should—" "Robert, your legal expertise is admirable, but this isn't a courtroom," Beatrice interrupted smoothly, not missing a beat. "This is about social standards, not legal procedures." Blair had positioned herself for the perfect angle, ensuring the chandeliers glittered in the background of her shot. Her Instagram Live was now pulling in 75,000 viewers. The comments streamed relentlessly. "Why is she still there? Security is useless. This is so awkward. Someone just tell the poor girl to leave." Dr. Reed was frantically checking her tablet again, cross-referencing donor lists, her brow furrowed with worry. "The Vance Foundation is definitely our platinum sponsor. $500,000 contribution confirmed." "Foundation names can be stolen, Evelyn," Harrison Delancey interjected, finally pocketing his buzzing phone. "Corporate identity theft is more common than you think. It's a serious problem." Holloway approached Ilara with visible reluctance, his face a mask of professional regret. "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me to verify your credentials privately." "No." Beatrice's voice cut through the murmur like a surgeon's scalpel. "This needs to be handled transparently. We have all witnessed this situation unfold. Granting her privacy would only enable further deception." The crowd murmured its agreement. Someone shouted, "Make her prove she belongs here." Dr. Evans shook her head in disgust, pulling her husband aside. "Charles, I have never seen anything this cruel at a charity event. Should we intervene?" He whispered back, "How, Alicia? They have her completely surrounded. It's a mob." Ilara remained motionless in the center of the circle, still holding the torn invitation pieces. Her composure was unnerving. There were no tears, no flashes of anger, no desperate, defensive explanations. Just a quiet, unshakable dignity that somehow made the situation even more disturbing for those with a conscience. Sterling sensed the crowd's unease and escalated his performance. "Guys, I think she's in shock, like reality is finally hitting her hard." He zoomed in tight on her face. This is what delusion looks like when it crashes head-on into the truth. The museum's photographer continued documenting everything. His professional eye captured the ugly power dynamics, the racial undertones, the mob mentality of Chicago's supposed elite. Blair, meanwhile, noticed other high-profile attendees in the background of her live stream and began frantically tagging them. "Chicago Lux, a Windy City Elites, a Gold Coast Living, come see this disaster in person." Her tags worked. More influencers and society reporters arrived, phones at the ready, sensing viral content. The circle expanded to include fashion bloggers, gossip columnists, and wannabe social media stars, all drawn to the scent of public destruction. "This is Melissa Crawford reporting live from the Grandorian Celestial Ball," announced a young woman with a press badge, speaking into her phone. "We are witnessing an unprecedented security situation involving a possible gate crasher, and the Delancey family is handling it personally." The crowd's phones created a dazzling, cruel constellation of recording lights, documenting every angle of Ilara's humiliation. Later, investigators would count over 50 separate video recordings of the incident. Dr. Reed tried one last time to regain control. "Perhaps we could move this to my office." "Absolutely not," Beatrice declared, her voice ringing with finality. "Public problems require public solutions. This young woman chose to make a spectacle of herself. She can face the consequences publicly." Holloway looked desperately uncomfortable. "Ma'am, museum policy requires we handle these situations discreetly." "Your policy is clearly not working," Harrison interrupted, stepping forward to stand beside his wife. "The Delancey family has been supporting this institution for 20 years. Our judgment should carry some weight here." Ilara's phone buzzed again, the screen briefly visible. "Dad, emergency. Answer now," followed by 23 missed call notifications. She declined it again, without speaking a word. Sterling pounced. "Even her fake emergency calls won't save her now. Daddy's imaginary money can't buy her way out of this one." The crowd laughed. Someone shouted, "Just call the real police." Another voice added, "This is taking forever. Can't security just drag her out?" Judge Miller tried again, his voice firm. "Beatrice, this has gone far enough. The young woman has not caused any actual disturbance." "Her very presence is a disturbance," Blair snapped, still live streaming. "Some of us paid serious money to be here tonight. We shouldn't have to deal with this riffraff." The comment section on her feed exploded with agreement. "Exactly. Know your place. So entitled. Security is weak." Dr. Evans had finally had enough. "I'm leaving. This is disgusting." She turned to her husband. "Charles, we're going. I will not be a part of this lynch mob." Beatrice's eyes flashed dangerously. "Alicia, if you can't handle the necessity of maintaining social standards, perhaps you should reconsider your position on our hospital's board." The threat, cold and clear, hung in the air. Dr. Evans stopped walking, her career, her life's work, suddenly on the line. Sterling seized the moment for his audience. "And that's how it's done, people. Sometimes reality requires enforcement." His second TikTok had reached 250,000 views. The elderly businessman who had been quietly recording finally spoke up, his voice resonating with moral authority. "Young man, I have seen enough. This behavior is reprehensible." "Sir, with all due respect, you don't understand the situation," Harrison replied smoothly, the perfect corporate politician. "We are protecting the integrity of this institution." "You are destroying it," the man shot back. Beatrice raised her hand for silence, her voice carrying across the marble hall like a royal decree. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have been more than patient. Security, I am formally requesting that this trespasser be removed from the premises, immediately." The crowd erupted in applause. Phone cameras captured the moment from every angle as Holloway reluctantly approached Ilara. "Miss, I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, "but I have to ask you to leave." Ilara looked up at him, her eyes calm, clear, and unreadable. "I understand your position, Officer Holloway." The fact that she knew his name surprised him. A small, unsettling detail. She reached into her clutch, not for identification, not for a wallet, but for her phone. "Actually," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the noise as she speed-dialed a number, "I think it's time I made a phone call of my own." The phone rang once before connecting. "Hi, Dad." 2 simple words. "Hi, Dad." Phooey, they landed in the supercharged atmosphere of the Grandorian Museum's main hall and detonated, creating a vacuum of absolute silence. The crowd's chatter died instantly. Every single one of the 200 guests, from the titans of industry to the doyens of society, strained to hear the conversation. Beatrice Delancey's triumphant smile flickered, then froze. Something in Ilara's tone, calm, authoritative, and chillingly familiar, sent an icy shiver down her spine. "Yes, I'm still at the museum," Ilara continued, her eyes locked on Beatrice's face, never wavering. "Actually, I think you should know what the Delancey family really thinks about our community, about our foundation." Dr. Reed's face went ashen. She grabbed her tablet, her fingers fumbling as she frantically scrolled through the donor files. Her hands trembled as she cross-referenced names, sponsors, and foundation records. The Vance Foundation. Julian Vance. CEO, Vance Dynamics. She looked up from the screen, a silent scream of horror dawning in her eyes. "My God," she whispered to herself. "Oh my God." Sterling's TikTok stream, still live, captured the museum director's reaction in perfect, horrifying detail. His 280,000 viewers watched her face transform from professional concern to absolute terror. The comment section exploded. "What's happening? Who is Julian Vance? Why does the director look like she's about to have a heart attack?" Harrison Delancey's brilliant business mind made the connection first. His phone had been buzzing all evening. 23 missed calls from Julian Vance, the CEO of Vance Dynamics. The same Julian Vance whose $900 million partnership was the only thing that could save Delancey Industries from a catastrophic bankruptcy. The same Julian Vance he was scheduled to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to sign the papers that would secure his family's legacy for another generation. The blood drained from his face as the full, horrifying implications crashed over him like a tidal wave. "Julian Vance," he whispered, the words barely audible, choked with dread. The Julian Vance." Judge Miller, having heard the name, pulled out his own phone and did a quick search. His voice carried across the now silent crowd as he read the screen. "Julian Vance, CEO and founder of Vance Dynamics. Net worth, $18.2 billion. Forbes' 10 richest Americans list. Philanthropist of the Year 2022. The crowd heard the fragments as dozens of others began searching on their own phones. Tech empire, billionaire, Vance Dynamics. That Vance? Several socialites gasped audibly. Tiffany Sterling nearly dropped her phone mid-live stream. The fashion blogger, Melissa Crawford, stopped her reporting entirely, her face going chalk white. Ilara continued her phone conversation, her voice growing slightly colder, each word a perfectly aimed dart. "Dad, they tore up our foundation's invitation, called it a fake, said I was— what was the phrase you used, Sterling? A worthless charity case that needed to be removed before I stunk up the whole room?" Sterling's phone shook violently in his hands. His audience of over 300,000 people watched in real time as the blood drained from his face. The comment section, once a river of mockery, instantly shifted to one of pure shock. "Wait, what? Is she for real? Julian Vance has a daughter? This family is about to be destroyed!" Blair's Instagram live chat erupted in absolute chaos. "OMG, that's the Vance. She's Julian Vance's daughter, the tech billionaire. Holy shit, they are so screwed. Screen recording everything." Beatrice grabbed Harrison's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his suit jacket. Her grip was desperate, frantic. "Tell me this isn't happening," she hissed, her voice a strangled whisper. "Tell me that's not actually—" "The Julian Vance," Harrison finished, his own voice cracking under the immense pressure. "The man whose company partnership is the only thing standing between us and absolute ruin. The $900 million joint venture we're signing tomorrow morning. The deal that saves our entire empire." Dr. Reed's voice cut through the crowd, shaking with a panic that bordered on hysteria. "Ms. Vance? Ilara Vance? I am so deeply, profoundly sorry. There has been a terrible, horrible misunderstanding." "Actually, Dr. Reed, there has been no misunderstanding at all." Ilara's voice remained perfectly calm, almost serene, which made it all the more terrifying. "Everyone here has seen exactly who the Delancey family really is when they think nobody important is watching." The crowd's phones continued recording, but the energy had completely, irrevocably shifted. What moments before had been a source of cruel entertainment was now becoming evidence. Criminal evidence. Civil evidence. Career-destroying, life-altering evidence. Holloway backed away from Ilara as if she were radioactive, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. "Ma'am. Ms. Vance, I had absolutely no idea. I was just following orders from—" "Of course you didn't, Officer Holloway," Ilara said, her gaze sweeping over the Delancey family. "That was precisely the point of tonight, to see how people treat others when they think there are no consequences." She held up the torn pieces of the invitation, each fragment catching the light from the massive chandeliers. "This," she announced, her voice ringing with newfound power, "is what the Delancey family thinks of a $500,000 charity donation. This is what they think of the foundation that funds arts education for underprivileged children all across Chicago." Beatrice's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish drowning in air. Her masterful social media performance had just become a public relations cataclysm of epic proportions, being broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of viewers across multiple platforms. Sterling, in a blind panic, desperately tried to end his TikTok stream, but his fumbling, sweaty fingers couldn't find the right buttons. His 320,000 viewers watched him grapple with his phone in real time, the comments flooding in. "Don't stop recording. This is legendary. Screen recording everything. Best plot twist in history." Blair had better reflexes. She ended her Instagram live immediately, but it was too late. 75,000 viewers had witnessed everything from start to finish. Screenshots and screen recordings were already spreading across TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at a viral velocity that was impossible to contain. "Dad," Ilara continued into her phone, her voice clear and precise. "Should I mention that Sterling has been filming this entire incident for TikTok? That Blair live-streamed my humiliation to over 75,000 of her followers? That Beatrice announced to 200 of Chicago's elite that I was trash who needed to be removed from civilized society?" Harrison tried desperately to salvage the situation, stepping forward with his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Ms. Vance, Ilara, please, there has been a terrible mistake. My family, we had absolutely no idea who you were." "No idea about what, Mr. Delancey?" Ilara shot back, her calm finally breaking to reveal the steel beneath. "No idea that a black woman could afford a ticket to a charity gala? No idea that someone in a department store dress might possess generational wealth? Or no idea that your actions have consequences that extend beyond your tiny, insulated social bubble?" The crowd pressed closer, phones still recording from every conceivable angle. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had completely reversed. The Delancey family now stood in the center of the circle, trapped, surrounded by a constellation of cameras documenting their public destruction. Dr. Alicia Evans stepped forward, her voice carrying the full weight of her professional authority. "As a medical professional and a witness to everything that happened here tonight, I can testify that what I saw was systematic discrimination. It was deliberate, calculated, and breathtakingly cruel." Judge Miller nodded grimly. "I have presided over enough discrimination cases in my 30 years on the bench to recognize textbook racial profiling when I witness it firsthand." The elderly businessman who had been quietly recording spoke up again. "Young lady, I have the entire incident documented on my phone, from the moment they called you worthless trash until this very second. Jostor tor consitsom." Ilara's phone conversation continued, each word audible to everyone in the deadly silence that had fallen over the hall. "Dad, they want to remove me from the charity gala that our foundation is sponsoring, the museum where we donated over $3 million last year alone." Beatrice finally found her voice, though it came out as a pathetic, desperate whisper. "Please, your father, our companies, this partnership deal, it means everything to us." "Beatrice," Ilara said quietly, ending her call and pocketing her phone. Her eyes were cold, hard diamonds. "You just spent 45 minutes telling 200 people that I was worthless trash who didn't belong in civilized society. You filmed it. You broadcast it live. You made my humiliation into entertainment for your social media followers." She gestured to the crowd of phones, still recording their every move. "What exactly did you think was going to happen when the truth finally came out?" Sterling's TikTok was still running, now showing his own terror-stricken face as reality crashed down around him. The comment section had become a tsunami of condemnation. "Your family is disgusting. This is what racism looks like in 2023. I hope your company goes bankrupt. Screen recording everything for the news." Harrison's phone rang, the sound cutting through the silence like a knife. He looked at the screen with shaking hands. "Julian Vance. Urgent. Answer now." With trembling fingers, he answered. "Julian, I can explain everything." The voice that came through the speaker was ice-cold, calm, and audible to everyone in the sudden, tomb-like quiet. "Harrison, I'm 3 minutes away from the museum. Don't you dare move an inch!" Those 3 minutes felt like 3 lifetimes. The Grandorian Museum's opulent marble hall had transformed from a party into a corporate courtroom, with 200 elite witnesses holding their phones like evidence collectors. The Delancey family stood frozen in the center, a tableau of ruin, while Ilara remained calm at the periphery, checking her messages. Her phone buzzed with a text, visible to the guests nearby. "Dad. Board emergency meeting moved to 10 p.m. tonight. Delancey partnership under immediate review. The massive, ornate museum doors swung open with an echo that silenced every last whisper. Julian Vance entered not like a man, but like a force of nature. 6'3", dressed in a charcoal Brioni suit that probably cost more than a car, he was flanked by 2 assistants and a woman who radiated the unmistakable aura of a high-powered corporate lawyer. His presence commanded immediate, absolute attention. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lowered slightly as the crowd instinctively recognized true power when it walked into a room. "Good evening," Julian said, his voice carrying easily across the vast hall, a low baritone that was both smooth and menacing. His eyes swept the crowd before settling on his daughter. "Ilara, are you all right?" She nodded once, a small, affirmative gesture. "I'm fine, Dad. Just educated." Julian's gaze shifted to the Delancey family. Beatrice, Sterling, and Blair had unconsciously huddled behind Harrison, as if his Brooks Brothers suit could shield them from the approaching storm. "Harrison," Julian said, his voice deceptively calm, a quiet prelude to destruction. "I received a rather interesting phone call from my daughter. Something about your family's unique approach to community relations." Dr. Reed rushed forward, tablet in hand, her professional composure completely shattered. "Mr. Vance, I am mortified by what happened here tonight. The museum takes full and complete responsibility for this catastrophic failure." Julian held up one hand, a simple gesture that stopped her mid-sentence. "Dr. Reed, you are not responsible for the Delancey family's behavior, but you are responsible for how your institution responds to it. We'll talk later." He turned back to Harrison, who was visibly sweating despite the museum's powerful climate control. "Let's discuss some numbers, shall we? Delancey Industries' current debt load, $1.8 billion. Your stock price, down 82% over the last year. Your quarterly losses, $112 million. Harrison's face went gray. These were private, confidential financial details, not public knowledge. "Without our partnership," Julian continued, his voice as sharp as a surgeon's blade, "your company has approximately 45 days before you must declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy. With it, you projected a return to profitability within 2 years. He paused, letting the full weight of the financial reality sink in. "Past tense, Harrison. Projected." Sterling's hands shook so violently he could barely hold his phone. His TikTok was still live, now showing 450,000 viewers watching his family's empire crumble in real time. Julian's assistant, a sharp-dressed woman with a tablet, stepped forward. "Sir, shall I read the social media documentation we've compiled?" "Please, Catherine." Her voice was clinical, professional, devoid of all emotion. Sterling Delancey's TikTok account, 4 videos posted tonight, combined viewership of 1.2 million and climbing. Content includes referring to Ms. Vance as trash, delusional, a charity case, and suggesting she doesn't belong in civilized society. Sterling tried to interrupt, to stammer out an excuse, but Catherine's voice rolled right over him. "Blair Delancey's Instagram live stream," she continued, "broadcast to 75,000 viewers, duration of 45 minutes. Content includes mockery of Ms. Vance's appearance, accusations of crashing the event, and active encouragement of public humiliation." Blair's face was the color of ash. Her carefully curated influencer career was evaporating in real time as brand partners began receiving thousands of angry messages. Beatrice Delancey, the assistant concluded, documented on over 50 separate videos making physical contact with Ms. Vance, deliberately destroying her invitation and repeatedly calling for security to remove the trash from the premises. Beatrice finally found her voice, a desperate, pleading squeak. "Julian, please, I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I had no idea who Ilara was." "Stop!" Julian's voice cut like ice. "Just stop, Beatrice. You didn't mistake my daughter's identity. You saw a young black woman in a simple dress and decided, based on nothing but your own bigotry, that she did not deserve a shred of basic human dignity." He gestured to the crowd, the sea of phones. "You made that decision in front of 200 witnesses. You filmed it, you broadcast it, you turned it into entertainment." Dr. Evans stepped forward. "Mr. Vance, I witnessed the entire incident. Your daughter handled herself with remarkable grace under circumstances that were utterly inexcusable. Judge Miller nodded. As someone who has presided over discrimination cases, what I witnessed tonight was textbook harassment, rooted in blatant racial and class-based assumptions. Julian's legal counsel spoke for the first time. We have, at last count, 53 separate video recordings of tonight's incident from 21 different angles. The documentation is comprehensive. Harrison desperately tried to salvage something, anything from the wreckage. Julian, surely this personal matter, it shouldn't affect our business relationship, our companies. Our companies? Julian's eyebrows rose. Harrison, my company partners exclusively with organizations that share our core values of integrity, respect, and inclusion. Tonight, your family demonstrated, in the most public way imaginable, exactly what values you prioritize. He turned to address the entire crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, you've all witnessed something remarkable tonight. A family so comfortable in their privilege that they are willing to publicly humiliate a young woman for sport. A family that sees charity events not as opportunities to give back, but as opportunities to enforce their own twisted social hierarchies. His voice grew colder. The question is, what kind of business culture do you think that family creates? How do they treat employees who don't look like them? Customers who don't dress like them? Communities that don't share their privilege? Sterling's phone was blowing up with notifications, a digital death knell. His TikTok comment section had become a nightmare. Your family is disgusting. This is the face of modern racism. Hope your company goes bankrupt. We are screen recording everything for the media. Julian pulled out his own phone. Harrison, I'm going to make a conference call. My entire board of directors is waiting. He dialed, putting the call on speaker. Gentlemen, I'm at the Grandorian Museum with the Delancey family. You have all received the video documentation of tonight's incident. A voice came through the speaker, crisp and clear. Julian, we've reviewed the materials. The board's position is unanimous. Another board member spoke. The partnership agreement contained explicit clauses regarding corporate values alignment and public conduct. This appears to be a clear and egregious violation. Harrison's voice cracked. Please. Our employees, thousands of jobs depend on this partnership. Harrison, Julian said quietly, his voice laced with a cold fury. You should have thought about your employees before you and your family decided to publicly humiliate mine. Ilara spoke for the first time since her father's arrival, her voice clear and strong. Dad, I'd like to suggest something. All eyes in the room turned to her. The crowd leaned forward, phones still capturing every word. The Delancey family has shown us who they are, she said. But they could also show us who they are willing to become. Beatrice looked up, a desperate flicker of hope in her eyes. Complete and total public accountability, Ilara continued, laying out her terms. Public, unscripted apologies to every single person who witnessed tonight's events. Mandatory, intensive bias and sensitivity training for the entire Delancey Industries board and executive team, administered by a firm of my choosing. A $20 million fund, established in the next 24 hours, to support organizations fighting racial and economic discrimination in Chicago, and quarterly, publicly released diversity and inclusion audits conducted by an independent third-party firm. She paused, her voice growing stronger, more resolute. If they are willing to do the work, the real, hard, painful work, not just PR damage control, then maybe, just maybe, they deserve a chance to prove they can change. Julian studied his daughter's face, a look of profound pride in his eyes. And if they're not willing? Then they'll have 45 days, Ilara said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper, to explain to their thousands of employees why their jobs disappeared, because their executives couldn't bring themselves to treat a black woman with basic respect at a charity gala. The silence in the hall stretched for a full 30 seconds, thick with tension. Harrison looked at his family's ruined faces, then at the sea of phones still recording, then at the financial abyss awaiting them. Finally, he nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. We accept. All conditions. Julian's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, then looked up at the shattered family before him. The board meeting has been postponed until tomorrow at 10 a.m. You have 18 hours to begin demonstrating that your acceptance isn't just empty words. He turned to leave, then paused, turning back for one final devastating blow. And Harrison? The partnership terms have changed. It is now a probationary agreement, subject to quarterly review based on your family's demonstrated tangible commitment to change. Don't disappoint me. As Julian and Alara walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before them like the Red Sea, Sterling's TikTok captured their departure. The comment section was unanimous. Legendary. Justice served cold. Best plot twist ever. They chose the right response. Now let's see if they do the work. 6 months later, the same grand marble hall where Alara Vance faced public humiliation hosted a very different kind of gathering. The inaugural Vance Delancey Corporate Responsibility Summit drew 300 business leaders, diversity consultants, and civil rights advocates. Dr. Evelyn Reed stood at the podium, her voice carrying across the crowd with a newfound confidence. 6 months ago, this museum witnessed an incident that could have destroyed lives and companies. Instead, thanks to the courage and vision of one young woman, it became a catalyst for unprecedented, transformative change. In the front row, the Delancey family sat with markedly different postures. Beatrice, dressed in a simple navy suit, no diamonds, no designer labels, took careful notes as speakers discussed the insidious nature of unconscious bias. Sterling had traded his TikTok fame for genuine advocacy, his phone now used to record testimonials from scholarship recipients funded by their foundation. Blair's Instagram, once a monument to luxury lifestyle content, had transformed into an educational platform about privilege, accountability, and social justice. Harrison Delancey approached the microphone, his hands steady, but his voice carrying the weight of hard-learned, painful lessons. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share some numbers with you," he began. "Not financial projections or market analyses, but human impact data." He clicked his first slide. Delancey Industries diversity statistics from 6 months ago. 2% Black employees in leadership roles, 9% women in executive positions, 0 minority-owned suppliers in our top vendor tier. The crowd listened intently. "Today's numbers," he continued, a note of pride in his voice. 34% minority leadership, 48% women executives, 40% of our supply chain contracts are now with minority and women-owned businesses. Dr. Sophia Reyes, Delancey Industries' new Chief Diversity and Equity Officer and a former Vance Dynamics executive, joined Harrison at the podium. These changes were not just policy updates, she explained. They required a complete cultural demolition and reconstruction from the boardroom to the factory floor. She gestured to a large screen displaying employee testimonials. David Chen, promoted from junior analyst to head of market research. Aisha Jones, whose innovative logistics proposal had saved the company $4 million annually. Dr. Samuel Green, whose R&D team had just secured their most profitable patent in a decade. The audience saw faces that reflected the true diversity of America. Employees who had been overlooked, undervalued, or completely excluded under the old, biased system. Beatrice rose from her seat and approached the microphone with a visible, profound nervousness. The same woman who had commanded the room 6 months ago with her cruel confidence now spoke with a genuine, hard-won humility. "I want to address the elephant in the room," she began, her voice trembling slightly. 6 months ago, in this very spot, I publicly humiliated a young woman based on nothing but my own racist and classist assumptions. I destroyed her invitation, I called her trash, and I tried to have her removed from an event her family was sponsoring. Her voice strengthened as she continued. I have spent these past 6 months in intensive, one-on-one bias training. I have volunteered in community centers on the South Side. And most importantly, I have been listening, really listening, to the people I had spent 60 years of my life ignoring. She clicked to a photo of herself serving meals at a community kitchen. This is Mrs. Henderson, age 72, a retired school teacher. She taught me that dignity isn't determined by designer labels. This is Jamal, age 28, a software engineer. He helped me understand that intelligence doesn't correlate with zip codes or skin color. Sterling stepped forward, his transformation perhaps the most dramatic of all. The young man who had filmed Ilara's humiliation for TikTok entertainment now spoke with a quiet, earned authority. My videos from that night have been viewed over 5 million times across various platforms. Initially, I was mortified, ashamed. But then I realized, good. Let people see it. Let them see what unchecked privilege and casual prejudice look like when they think nobody important is watching. He showed his phone screen to the crowd. This is my new TikTok content. Last week, a video explaining implicit bias to a Gen Z audience, 1.5 million views. The week before, an interview series with HBCU students about the barriers they face in corporate America, 2.1 million views. The comment sections he displayed showed a remarkable, inspiring shift. This is real education. Using his platform for good now. Redemption arc is complete. Blair's transformation was equally profound. The woman whose Instagram livestream had broadcast Ilara's humiliation to 75,000 followers now used her platform for social justice education. I lost over 150,000 followers in the first month, she admitted, her voice clear. But I gained something infinitely more valuable, a community of people committed to real, substantive change. My Privilege Check series now reaches 500,000 people monthly with content about recognizing and dismantling systemic advantages. She showed screenshots of her recent posts, partnerships with civil rights organizations, fundraisers for educational nonprofits, brutally honest discussions about wealth inequality and the responsibilities that come with it. Julian Vance took the stage, his presence still commanding, but warmer, more hopeful than that night 6 months ago. The question everyone asks is, why? Why did we give them a second chance? Why not simply destroy them and move on? He paused, scanning the audience. Because destruction is easy, transformation is hard, and transformation creates lasting change that benefits everyone, not just the people in this room. The screen behind him displayed financial data. The Vance Delancey partnership has generated $1.5 billion in revenue this year, but more importantly, it has created over 3,000 new jobs, with 72% of those roles going to candidates from underrepresented communities. Dr. Evans, who had witnessed the original incident, stood to speak. As someone who wanted to walk out that night, I am eternally grateful that I stayed to see what real accountability in action looks like. She gestured to a display board showing concrete outcomes. The Delancey Family Foundation has donated $25 million to HBCU scholarships, minority business incubators, and criminal justice reform organizations. But beyond the money, they have donated their time, their platform, and their willingness to be deeply uncomfortable while they learn and grow. Judge Miller added his perspective. In 30 years on the bench, I have seen how discrimination cases usually end, with sealed legal settlements and no real change in behavior. This represents something new, something better, voluntary, comprehensive, and sustained transformation. The summit's most powerful moment came when Ilara herself took the stage. now 26, and serving as Vance Dynamics Vice President of Corporate Social Impact, she commanded the room with a quiet, unshakable authority. 6 months ago, I stood in this same space being called trash, having my invitation torn up, and facing security guards who wanted to remove me from a charity event my family sponsored. She gestured to the audience. Today, this room is full of executives who have implemented mandatory bias training, entrepreneurs who have fundamentally changed their hiring practices, and young people who have found the courage to speak up when they witness injustice. Her voice grew stronger. The Delancey family's behavior that night was inexcusable, but their response in the month since has been extraordinary. Real change requires both accountability for past harm and an unwavering commitment to future growth. She clicked to her final slide, a montage of photos. The scholarship recipients, the newly promoted employees, the new diversity initiatives spreading like wildfire across corporate America. 42 Fortune 500 companies have now adopted similar accountability protocols. 23 universities now require implicit bias training for all faculty and students. 12 states have passed legislation inspired by what they witnessed here. The room erupted in a standing ovation as Ilara concluded. That night, the Delancey family showed us the worst of who they were. These past 6 months, they have shown us the best of who we all can become. Beatrice approached the microphone one final time, tears streaming down her face. I can never undo what I did that night. The shame of it will live with me forever. But I can, and I will, spend the rest of my life ensuring it never happens again. Not by me, not by my family, and not in any organization we have the power to influence. The summit concluded with a commitment ceremony. 94 companies signed pledges to implement comprehensive diversity and accountability programs. The Grandorian Accord became a new gold standard, a template for corporate accountability nationwide. As the crowd dispersed, Sterling's final TikTok of the day showed him shaking hands with a group of scholarship recipients, his face filled with a genuine joy he had never known before. His caption was simple: "Growth is possible, accountability works, change is real." 2 years later, the legacy of that night had rippled across the globe. Ilara Vance stood before the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, addressing delegates from 193 countries. At 28, she had become a global voice for a new generation, the youngest person ever to deliver the keynote address on corporate accountability and social justice. 2 years ago, I was publicly humiliated at a charity gala by people who judged me solely on my appearance and the color of my skin, she began, her voice carrying across the vast assembly hall. Today, that single ugly incident has sparked a global movement that has transformed how businesses, governments, and individuals approach the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The massive screen behind her displayed staggering statistics. The Grandorian model had been adopted by over 2,500 companies worldwide. Corporate discrimination complaints had decreased by 41% in participating organizations. Minority hiring in leadership roles had increased by an astonishing 97%. The Delancey family's transformation was now complete and profound. Beatrice Delancey, a certified diversity and inclusion consultant, addressed Fortune 500 boards monthly. Her autobiography, The $900 Million Lesson, Learning to See My Own Privilege, had become required reading in business ethics courses at over 100 universities. Each of her workshops began the same way. She would play the raw, unedited video from that night. "I make them watch me," she told a documentary crew. "Destroy an invitation, call a young woman worthless, and try to have her removed from an event her family sponsored. Then I ask them, what assumptions are you making right now? What prejudices are hiding in your blind spots?" Sterling Ashford's TikTok account, Bassam Privilege Check, reached over 5 million followers with content that was both educational and deeply personal. His series, Growing Up Rich and Wrong, had been viewed over 80 million times. He used his platform to mentor inner-city teenagers in entrepreneurship, leveraging his family's connections to open doors that had once been welded shut. Blair's Instagram was a case study in authentic transformation. She had graduated from law school, specializing in civil rights advocacy, and now worked for the ACLU. Her social media influence drove policy discussions on criminal justice reform and voting rights, and she was considered one of the most effective digital activists of her generation. Harrison Delancey, now celebrated as a visionary CEO, had proven that justice was not just good ethics, but good business. When we implemented our comprehensive diversity initiatives, he told a crowd at Davos, our skeptics predicted decreased efficiency and increased costs. Instead, employee productivity increased by 28%. Customer satisfaction rose by 35%, and our stock price has outperformed the S&P 500 by over 70% in 2 years. The business case for justice had become undeniable. The movement, now called the Metropolitan Accord, had inspired international legislation. The European Union had passed comprehensive corporate accountability laws. Nations in Africa and South America were implementing similar protocols for multinational corporations. As Ilara concluded her UN address, she issued a challenge that would define the next phase of the movement. Every single day, each of us faces moments where we can choose dignity over prejudice, inclusion over exclusion, growth over comfort. The question isn't whether you will face these moments. You will. The question is, what will you choose? Will you be someone who diminishes others to elevate yourself? Or will you be someone who lifts others up to heights you never imagined possible? What about you? What will you choose? Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace, your community, or your social circles? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters in this ongoing conversation about dignity and justice. Tag 3 people in your life who exemplify inclusive leadership and tell them why their example inspires you. Change spreads through networks of courage and accountability. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more inspiring accounts of resilience, transformation, and the incredible power of choosing dignity over revenge. Ring that notification bell and join our community of viewers committed to creating a world where everyone's worth is recognized, celebrated, and defended. Share this video with someone who needs to see that their dignity matters, that their voice counts, and that their presence in any space is valuable and valid. Remember, true power isn't the ability to humiliate others. It is the wisdom to transform moments of crisis into opportunities for growth, understanding, and lasting positive change. Sometimes the most important deals aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in the dignity we preserve, the justice we create, and the future we build together.